Because even if you
So
talk about overcoming trauma, one of the things that I love that you said was that forgiveness is one of the main keys to overcoming trauma. And Amber, I want to ask you, why do you think that? Because I've noticed that forgiveness is a huge topic in life. If you ever ask someone, I don't know, this is just my scientific research by Stephanie, but
yeah.
I find it interesting that majority of people deal with offense. Majority of people deal with hurt, deal with unforgiveness. In the industry, is that something that you commonly see where unforgiveness is a big thing, and why do people struggle with forgiveness?
I think forgiveness is just it's a big issue in general, and it has a lot to do with how you shaped and formed your identity a lot of times, and a lot of us shape and form our identity as victims, because it justifies what happened to you when you can say that person did this to me, and now I react this way, again taking the responsibility out of your actions because this person did A, B, and C. Now I can do D. And forgiveness is it's one of the things that I really had to work through, because no, it wasn't your fault, and you were dealing with what it is that you're dealing with. But like I said, my trauma was my responsibility. So now I have to do what I need to do to move forward in my life, because that person is...
You control that reaction.
That person's gone.
That's it. You control that reaction.
Yeah, they're gone. And I couldn't put it that way, but
that's what you
I'm
were
doing.
Essentially doing.
Yeah.
Because scientifically, basically, there's a principle in quantum physics called entanglement, and all that means is the most logical thing. We're all connected. Everything, all humanity is connected. That is how we are designed. Love connects us as humans. And in quantum physics, if two particles are pushed apart by thousands, they pushed apart very, very far apart. If one turns this way, the other one will immediately turn that way. Einstein used to call this basically a ghostly action at a distant kind of thing. What it means essentially with forgiveness is that you are still entangled. If someone hurt you and you are then still thinking about that, you are still connected. You are still... They spin that way, you spin that way. Yep. They jump this way, you jump that way. So there's a puppet connection. So by forgiveness...
A puppet connection, wow.
There's the marionette, you're being played. So therefore, when you forgive, you cut the strings. So it doesn't excuse what the person has done to you, because what they've done is wrong, but they've got to deal with that. It's not for you to fix them.
Yeah.
It's for you to deal with your reaction, or you're going to be a horrible person. That's quite frank. Forgiveness, keeping that unforgiveness makes you bitter. Yep. Bitter makes, and you cannot hide it. No matter how much you think the person that's irritating you, or the person's whatever, that it's connected.
Because again, that thought is real in your mind.
It's real, and it's generating energy. It's generating that connectedness. So forgiveness does create the disentanglement.
I think that even when we just continue this conversation on forgiveness, I always wonder, because let's say for example in the church, we talk about forgive and forget and things like that. But I do believe that forgiveness goes beyond the commandment, because again, it's dealing with, when you talk about how everything, our actions are produced by our thought life. And so there has to be a change of perception about the person or what they did. And we may not understand why that happened in particular. You never understand why that happened. But I do believe that how we perceive their actions is what ought to change, because when God says, forgive as a commandment, it's almost like that commandment is coupled by some form of revelation about life. And, in one of the things that I experienced when I was, I was probably like my early teens or maybe 12 or something like that. So my father was murdered. And we then realized, I think I was about 11 or 12 or something like that, that an uncle of mine who I was very close to was the person that orchestrated his death.
Oh my gosh!
That
wow.
he sent assassins to murder my father. And when that came up, I was like, "What? What just happened?" Because this was an uncle who was very close to me, and it was interesting because at that stage, I felt almost as though God was showing me how he views things and how he perceives things. And so I never had any resentment in the moment. And it bothered me because I was like, God, I want to be angry. I want to be angry for my mother because my mother is broken and she's crying. And I'm like, why am I not angry? It feels like this is not even my natural emotion. It feels like you're doing something here. And as I prayed concerning it, and what he spoke to me about was that it was almost like he was teaching me that for me to hold anger against him was to hold a truth about him to hold an idea about him that's not true. And he said, your uncle did not kill your father. Jealousy killed your father. And I find that fascinating because when you talk about the different steps in healing, that at a point, I believe it's step 4, where you disconnect yourself with the toxicness, where you say, I am not what made me toxic. I am not that. And I think that when we start perceiving people that way, that yes, you hurt me, but what hurt me is not the true version of you. What hurt me is not the highest version of you. Because one thing God said to me that stuck with me for the rest of my life was that no one will ever hurt you from a place of love or from a place of wholeness.
Which is that perfect you nature.
Which is the perfect you nature.
Wired for love.
Exactly. So I think that even when we talk about forgiveness, that I think it's very difficult for people because either we're trying to understand why they did it and understanding why they did it from the mindset of that is who they are.
Exactly.
Why are you that way? And your perspective, you can't get in their head. And so we react now in this state of bondage because even when we recognize the bondage we're in, we blame. We still point the finger and say, you put me in this bondage. You made me like this. But I do believe that when we start to perceive it differently, that revelation unlocks our ability to say, you know what? I've hurt people too. I have been the cause of someone's pain, the same way you're the cause of my pain in this moment. And when I realized that I was not my brokenness, I was not my toxicness, I was not my dysfunction, we should apply that to the lives of other people.
That's very, very good. That's very good because you actually then what you're doing is you're not giving that toxic energy the power. Because whatever you think about the most will grow. You're keeping entangled. So if that person, let's say that your uncle's, I don't know if he's still alive or not, but let's say that he's, okay, so wherever he lives, it may be far away, it may be close, but let's say he lives 10,000 miles away. If you still harboring the bitterness and you'll feel that pain inside of you, when we have unforgiveness towards someone, you can feel it in your body. Your body acts as, we have these things called discomfort zones in our bodies, which are physical reactions that our body has like alarm bells to warn us that something that we must become aware, something's not right. So with forgiveness, when we're not forgiving, our alarm systems in our body will go off. And if we keep that, our body will break down. So we will get illness in our life. So our own bodies will get physically ill, our mind will be affected. So forgiveness is a protective, and this is not selfish, it's basically a protective factor for you physically. It's not excusing the other person's behavior because that's not justifiable. What that person's done to murder someone out of jealousy is not something that's right. But that's not something that you can carry as a burden. And unforgiveness is a burden that we carry. And it's toxic and it's breaking down the brain and the body. So when we can get that in our mind, it goes along with you change your perception. You don't understand what they've done is wrong. Jealousy is wrong. Murder is wrong. But you can't get in that person's head because there's a bunch of reasons behind all of that. And but that's just something you can't really deal with. That's that person's issue. And I think when we don't forgive, what we're doing is keeping it. And scientifically, that's what you are. There's an invisible thread between that toxic thought and that person. When they think about you, the marionette's happening, the puppet's happening, that energy is now pouring into you. Think of the energy thing. That's toxic energy from that person that you haven't forgiven. You've kept a pathway open. Literally, and that's what scientifically happens. That's what quantum physics shows us. And that's what people that teach on quantum physics and the quantum physicists themselves will say key issue about quantum physics is love and forgiveness. And we have to, as humanity, its ability to choose is basically what quantum physics is. So there's one of the most fundamental sciences that is teaching and showing us the most fundamental of principles, which is forgiveness and love.